father who died from COVID-19 has left behind the ultimate legacy. His 6 children who all work on the NHS frontline. So extraordinary. 81-year-old Ahsan-ul-Haq Chaudry died at the end of December. All 6 of his children sacrificed precious time with their dad so that they could care for other patients battling coronavirus. And I'm pleased to say that 5 of the 6 children join us this morning. There they all are. We have ITU doctor, Dr. Salaya Ahsan. We have GP, Dr. Saira Ahsan. We have consultant paediatrician, Dr. Saima Ahsan. And we have Dr. Sophia, who is a GP. And she's with her brother, Dr. Shoaib, who is a junior doctor. And we have your brother, Shazli, there in a photograph, who's a pharmacist and wasn't able to join us this morning. But 5 out of 6 isn't bad, I Good don't morning think. to all of you, by the way. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It's such a difficult thing to have to talk to us. I can imagine that it must all be so raw for all of you because it's happened so quickly. But tell us a little bit about how your dad got ill. First of all, Dr. Salia.
So he'd been shielding all year. We'd be very careful about that. We actually can't pinpoint how it happened. It just goes to show to us that how incredibly careful people have to be and not complacent. So the first sign of him not being quite well, after an absolutely brilliant spell of being fully on it, he was cooking meals for everyone, he was a great chef, full of energy. He just developed a temperature and his mobility went down a little bit. It felt a bit weak. And I think it was when the nurse came home and took his oxygen levels, and I was told remotely that the oxygen levels were below 90. I just had that awful feeling in the pit of my stomach because that wasn't right. And then my brother and my sister, Shoaib and Safia, did the brave thing of taking him in. And I think that journey was quite challenging for them. But he'd been brilliant, absolutely brilliant all year. He had asthma, but it was extremely well controlled. And he lived a really fit, healthy, full life. And he was still studying for various degrees. You know, astrophysics was his passion. It's just so, still coming to terms. I still can't believe it, really.
Right, and it must be incredibly frustrating. I mean, to have all of you who work for the NHS, all of you doctors, and him taking this very, very seriously and to still not really understand where he contracted the virus just gives us all an insight into how easy it is to contract. Saira, am I right in saying that you actually worked in the hospital where your father was admitted? I imagine that must have been very difficult, looking after all these patients anyway, but suddenly knowing that your father was there too.
It was throughout his stay, I was undertaking urgent care shifts. And I knew it was bad because it was so confusing. When I was doing my shift, every patient that walked through the door either had confirmed COVID or symptoms of COVID. And then I knew, the test result for my father was delayed. But it was that moment where they wheeled out the X-ray to show us. They just showed us the X-ray. We were all around the X-ray table and we didn't say anything because the signs on the X-ray are more severe than what you're seeing symptomatically with my dad, and we knew what was to follow. So it's also that gut feeling because the projection of the disease. And you know what's to come, but you're always hopeful.
It's so terrifying because you were there having to go through it with others. Because you are also medical, I imagine that some people might hope that would give him and you all an advantage. I mean, were you working there able to give him some of the things that we've heard help symptoms, like steroids, like some of the other things, or was he not a case that would have benefited from that?
He did actually, as soon as he went into Queen's, he was given the steroids. They did follow due process. That was nothing to do with the fact that we were doctors. No. It's just that, we knew the symptoms. So I think in that situation, I wish I wasn't a doctor, to be honest with you, because it's sort of, you know what the numbers mean, you know what the blood test numbers mean, you know what the oxygen levels mean, you know, and you can see it in front of you. And actually, when you step back, 'cause it was so surreal, it was like a car crash in slow motion.
So can you, Sarah, just try and explain to people, because we aren't seeing in hospitals, our hospitals are overrun, as you know only too well. Can you describe what you are seeing on a day-to-day basis, sort of aside from your father and his illness, which was obviously so troubling and is still so raw, but how are people coping? What's it like in the hospital?
The day prior to my dad's passing, like I said, every patient had symptoms of COVID. I had 40-year-old men crying because they were unable to complete a sentence without that triggering coughing. They didn't meet the threshold for admission. So we did have to make sure that their oxygen levels were safe and send them home. But it was quite traumatic because COVID affects everything. It doesn't just affect your breathing, it affects your energy levels. It gives you constant headaches and mind fog. It was like a deluge. I don't know what happened. I just felt like I'd walked into a war zone. We have isolation areas where you put your COVID patients, but that was overspilling into the non-COVID areas. We're not coping.
That's frightening. That's frightening to hear. Let's talk a little bit about your dad, and we can come back to what you're seeing elsewhere. What was he like? I mean, he was clearly incredible, Saima, because he's inspired all of you to do such wonderful things with your life. But what was he like?
I think he was a very kind man. He was very larger than life. He had a big laugh, a loud voice, but he had a way of just bringing us all together. He was like the glue. Him and my mum were like the glue in our family. So from whatever shifts we were doing, he would just have a way of just all of us just gravitating towards him. He was always constantly supportive of everything we were doing. I think the week before he became unwell, he'd cooked for all of us and asked us to come and take it home for us. He knew that I was having a run of on-calls. I was meant to be on call these last few weeks. And he was saying, oh, well, let me cook something for you so you can eat, because they saw how hard we had been working throughout our training. So, and they knew that sometimes the work is grueling and you would prioritize things like sleep over eating, or they knew that how hard we would normally work. So they said, at least let's make sure that they eat. So they would always be thinking of us, always having that concern for us. And I think we saw them more as friends as we were adults rather than parents. So especially my dad, I think he always had wise words to give us, always wanted to have a chat, always very close to all of us, I think.
And he was very positive, even though I think you all felt that he knew what might be around the corner for him. As soon as it was confirmed he had COVID, he took it in as positive a way as he could and didn't complain, for instance. But hearing your sister there, Sarah, say that we're not coping, Saima, that must be so desperate that you can feel how much the NHS is struggling to cope and how much you want to be able to do the right thing for everyone and your dad.
Yeah, completely. It's you. I think you go to work and you want to give 100%, but the systems around you, they're just at breaking point. They really are. So within paediatrics, we're looking after adult patients now, and they're looking to redeploy doctors. All of our junior doctors, they're looking to redeploy into adult areas. Some of them haven't seen adult patients. I haven't seen adult patients for sort of 8 to 10 years, but we are having to sort of pull together and just try and find spaces. We don't have the physical space in a lot of the time to look after these patients. They're spilling over into the paediatric wards. In the paediatric ITUs, there's lots of patients there. So it is really quite frightening. And I think the next 2 weeks are really going to really stretch and push the NHS.
Safia and Shoaib, you were the two that took your father into hospital. As your big sister said, you know, that must have been really, really difficult, knowing what you were doing and knowing that you had to take him into hospital. But of course, all of you still working on the front line must be struggling to process what you have been through. You haven't had an opportunity to really mourn the passing of your father. Safia, how do you feel this morning? I mean, it's lovely for us to hear about you all talking so passionately about what an incredible influence your father has been on your lives. But, you know, how is it for you and your brother?
Well, It's still quite surreal, actually. It's a bit weird because you still think he's downstairs, and so yeah, I don't really know.
I think it's a bit difficult to process at the moment because, you know, like as most of the rest of the children, me and Sophia still kind of live at home mostly. So, you know, our routine is to wake up, go downstairs, sit in my dad's room, and chat for a while, and
we were trying to make the best situation out of lockdown because my dad always put a positive spin on it. So we'd probably go downstairs, make a coffee, catch up. He would ask us about our lives. What do we want to eat today? What do we want to do? I think the last thing we did, we had a really good Saturday before he got ill. We watched The Godfather whilst we ate some foods and just caught up on politics. And then talking about our mum, our dad likes to talk about our mum. He would always manage to make himself laugh so much that he would start choking. And we'd always get worried. So we'd always, and wherever you were in the house, like obviously we're upstairs and he had a downstairs bedroom, we'd always hear him on the phone with his friends laughing really loudly, or he would be in the kitchen and we would get the smell of food that he was making. And it's just, you just can't, it reached an inevitable house, really. It's just going to take a bit getting used to it. We don't actually know.
And there's a gift in that, isn't there? That you had that time, and now that you all have each other is a huge thing and such a strong cause. And you had that time because a lot of the time you were having to keep apart from him because of protecting everybody involved.
I was quite lucky because I only came back home in October. It was a year after my mum had passed away, so I wanted to. I didn't work for a while. I was working on the front line. I was working at home triaging, and I also teach medical students. And so I was working from home. So I was quite lucky. I sort of had that time with my dad. Unfortunately, my siblings didn't.
Well, you've been wonderful to talk to this morning.
Do you know what's lovely? And you can't see this because you can't necessarily see each other, but as each of you are talking about your dad, the rest of you have got these amazing beaming smiles. He is clearly
and nodding heads of agreement.
A powerful presence still with all of you, and that won't change remotely. The amount of comments we're getting already from Dan, it's incredible to see this family on the NHS. I'm sure your father was incredibly proud. Hugo, how incredible to see this man's 6 children working as doctors on the front line. He must have been so proud. Jackie says, thank you to the whole family. Sichi says, what a wonderful, admirable family. We can't thank you enough for all that you are doing. Sally, if we can perhaps leave with you just a message to anybody out there who is getting fed up and tired of lockdown, that maybe some people are thinking this isn't as bad as the news is saying that it is. What is your message to people out there today?
Be careful. It's real. It's nasty. I saw it close up. It took my dad. It has absolutely, you know, the disease is real, and just treat it with respect. No one is immune from it, really, and just don't be in our position. You've not got long. You know, the vaccine is... I'm still getting phone calls from the GP offering the vaccine to my dad. That's been really painful. We're just 13 days too late. But, you know, get your vaccine, and, you know, the government, get a grip.